Welcome, and thank you for joining me today to celebrate Scott's life in music. My name is Miriam Priest Benedict, and I thought I'd start by just saying something about when he first came to Delaware. He ended up living across the hall from me, and every once in a while, I'd hear a knock at my door, and it would be Scott giving me the keys that I had left in the lock. And every once in a while, Scott would hear a knock at his door, and it would be me giving him the keys because he left them in his lock. And that was kind of the beginning of us finding out things that we had in common. So now, Jerry will light the chalice while I read the chalice lighting words. If you have a chalice at home and you're watching online, please feel free to light it now. In our time of grief, we light a flame of sharing, the flame of ongoing life. In this time when we search for understanding and serenity in the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, and community. Now we will sing a hymn. It was one of Scott's favorites, and a lot of times we would sing it in the beginning of a Big Music Sunday. So we'll get some notes, and I'll start you off, and please join whenever you're comfortable. Earth is our homeland, a song of stars, a grace, wrought of the ages, and opal spun in space. Dawn's far blue hills, soft night, time still, dark ocean depth, smooth stone. For gifts sublime that hallowed time will sing, making deep thanksgiving known. Word is our glory, our breath of air, our cry. Parables, letters, or star names in the sky, or myths that play as poets pray, bring meaning to our lives. For every praise that owns our days will sing till the final day arrives. Music is wonder, an alchemy of art, love's pure enchantment, communion for the heart. From chants to psalms, from jazz to Brahms, no soul may stay at rest. For starry choir to the sky afar will sing, joined with them in anthem blessed. Hope is our high star, the certitude love brings. Silence our center, our living water spring. The aching heart, no self apart from whole and mystery. For gatherings of strengthening will sing throughout human history. Now we will have a video.
That walks high.
David is going to do a reading. Here he comes.
A Gift of Wisdom from the Tomato Man by Scott Ward. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation you never dreamed would happen. You find yourself in some little scene that puts things in a new perspective. The Tomato Man did that for me. It was a hot July day. I had visited a congregant at Wilmington Hospital, causing me to take a later bus home. This, unfortunately, meant that I had to sit on the bus bench longer than planned. I took a short hop on a bus to get to Rodney Square, which, if not cooler, at least offered some shade. Seeking further comfort, I went into the air-conditioned Happy Harry's to buy a cool drink. Medium-sized bottles of Gatorade were on sale for 99 cents, usually $1.19. I bought 6 cold ones. Did I mention it was hot? Finally, the number 11 pulled up, and thank goodness the AC was set at subarctic, and the bus was only half full. I took a seat in the front, feeling too tired to walk to the back. Traffic was heavy, so our progress was slow. I noticed a man sitting a few seats away from me, sort of mumbling to himself. This does not concern me. I have seen people speak in tongues on the bus. He struck up a quiet conversation with a woman sitting next to him. All I heard is her saying, "Well, yes, I do." The man reached into one of several plastic bags he had with him and handed her 2 tomatoes. She thanked him. We rode a while longer amid amicable silence. Minutes later, he called to a man sitting across the aisle and said, Sir, do you like tomatoes?" The man was a little startled at the question, but replied, "Why, yes, I do." Tomato Man went into his bag and handed him 2 tomatoes. The tomatoes looked ripe. They still had a little vine on them, but I couldn't really tell if they were homegrown or store-bought. All the bags matched with the Acme logo, but that could have meant anything. "Did you grow them yourself?" I asked. He smiled, reached into his bag, and handed me 2 tomatoes. I was sitting in a group of about 6 people. The Tomato Man then proceeded to give us all tomatoes. He then cleared his throat and asked us, "So, what are you going to do with my tomatoes?" He then cleared his throat and asked us, "So, what are you going to do with them?" There was a pause. Then one large woman with perfect skin said, "I'm just going to cool them in the fridge, then slice them, sprinkle a little salt and pepper on, and enjoy them in my screened-in back porch." We collectively nodded our heads. Honey," announced another woman. "I'm going to make me some salsa." Tomato Man reached into the bag and gave her 2 more tomatoes. "You'll need more." A man announced, "I cut off the tops, Sprinkle some cheese, garlic, and seasoning on them, then broil them till the tops are golden brown. The tomato man coughed a dry cough. I pulled out a Gatorade. Here, have this. He smiled, opened it, and took a long sip. The heavy-set lady said, "That looks good on a day like this." Needless to say, my Gatorade supply was quickly exhausted. "How about you?" someone asked me. "Oh, I like to do the mozzarella and fresh oregano thing, with a little balsamic vinegar." Salsa lady replies, "Woo, woo, I can see you're white, but balsamic vinegar? Damn." My protector, the heavy-set lady, spoke up. "I use balsamic all the time." Tomato man entered the fray, but it has to be aged just right. He went on to tell us about when he was in the army in Italy. There was a place that made the best balsamic vinegar in the world. Some of it was aged so long, a different generation than made the batch bottled the batch. There was no store, no distribution plan. You just had to know the right people. You couldn't buy it or take it from the farmhouse. He said he was lucky enough to get an invitation to dinner at the home of the balsamic makers. He said the vinegar was so good, you could just about drink it straight up. It was so good, it was better than sex. A comment from Salsa Lady. Nothing's better than sex. Oh, yes, it was. And no regrets the next morning. We all laughed. Our group was dwindling as people got off at their various stops. I was now sitting next to Tomato Man. I noticed from a certain smell that he had recently been sampling another fruit that grows on vines. No troubles. This was Tomato Man. He pulled the cord for the next stop, bent over to me, and whispered in my ear, "You want happiness, Mr. Balsamic? Grow a good tomato." The bus slowed and stopped. He got up with much effort, his age, 70 plus, I would guess. The driver announced, "You know you ain't getting off my bus without me getting a tomato or two." He ambled by her and gave her all the rest he had. She said, "Hon, you can't do that. I can't take the last of your tomatoes." He patted her hand, smiled, and said, "I'll grow more." I had about 10 minutes left on my bus ride, and I don't think I've ever seen a bus driver smile so widely for so long. I got home and started to make dinner. I had no mozzarella, only a drop of balsamic, and no fresh oregano. But diced tomato with onions, garlic, and olive oil over al dente pasta seemed to do the trick. They were wonderful tomatoes. Better than sex? Only my therapist will know. How's this for a new perspective? One happiness, one joy to the world. Grow a good tomato. You know what I mean.
Now it's time for sharing. I'll start, but I want to add a little thing about the microphone. You're going to come up here to share, and I'll adjust the mic so you don't have to worry about it at all. I'll start this off with a member of the choir when Scott was here. He was a tenor, and he fit in really well. We all liked him a lot, and he was he was a good guy. So he sent this to us, and he wanted us to share it. Scott was a larger-than-life presence, and he is missed. He was much more than a music director, He ministered to us and the community through his gifts of music. I haven't met anyone else like him. I still have the signed and framed music for This Little Light of Mine from Ellie's dedication, his daughter. It hangs in her room. I wanted to share that I was just at your church last year for UU OWL training. They had us upstairs in the choir room, and while nobody noticed it at all, I was in sort of a trance to be back in that place, knowing Scott was gone. They passed around a cup of pens for us to write with, and the one I grabbed was a white pen that had Scott Ward, Minister of Music, on it. And I'm sure nobody else even paid any mind, but I was so tickled to have gotten that pen. I did not return it. It sits on my desk upstairs. I wish you all well and hope today is a beautiful day. With love, Juan. So if you would like to come up and share a thought or memory, now's the time.
Hi, I'm Jan Shea. I did not prepare any remarks, and I will explain a little bit about why later on as I talk about Scott. The first thing I thought of today when I got thinking about coming here was some lyrics from a song written by Jackson Browne, who was one of my favorite artists of all time. And the song, to paraphrase it, was, "He was a friend to me when I needed one. If it wasn't for him, I don't know what I'd have done. He gave me back something that was missing in me." Well, I could stop there and tell you that's the whole story, and it is, but I'll give you a little detail. Like everyone here, we've had our bumps in the road, our traumatic experiences. I'm no different. Scott was there scraping me up off the floor more than once. I remember a particular time when my marriage had dissolved due to my ex having an affair, and after many days, nights, dinners of comfort, I remember he one day just said to me, "Have you heard from Voldemort lately?" And that became my ex-husband's name. To this day, actually, whenever we brought him up, it was Voldemort. And on the topic of nicknames, I had a son who was in that stage in middle school when we were coming here, where he would sit in his chair or in the pews at the time, showing with every ounce of body language he could that he was very put out that he was having to be here. He would twist, he would turn, he would look ornery, and Scott and Martin nicknamed him Pretzel Boy because of all the ways he did this. My son is now 31, a friendly, eloquent, fun-loving guy, and from the time of the nickname till now, he enjoyed coming back every Christmas to see Scott and Martin and to get good-naturedly ribbed about the Pretzel Boy thing. And that's still his name in our family, too. We call him Pretzel Boy sometimes. He was like that with kids. He could draw them out. He could encourage them. He didn't just encourage my kids. He encouraged every kid I ever saw him talk to, work with, encourage to sing or play the flute, as that beautiful picture in the program shows. He had a knack with kids. And that's kind of how he treated me as well, and probably everyone here. I wasn't special. I wasn't any more deserving. He just was kind and caring, and he would tell you that you mattered. He would encourage you to do things you never thought you could do, and then you found yourself doing them. More than once, he talked me into, a musical attempt that I might not have otherwise attempted. Sometimes turned out great, sometimes maybe not, but it was the encouragement. It was the gift of making you think you could do more, you could be more. That is what I will remember Scott most for. Most of you know I've been a worship associate for a long time here. I would not be one if it wasn't for Scott encouraging me one day to do a reading. And it was the first time I ever did. It was before we had worship associate programs at all, and it was a very controversial topic he and Martin had grappled over for quite a while, having to do with racism and theater and the musical Showboat. And I just remember feeling so honored to be asked to be the one to deliver that message. It gave me such a sense of my capabilities. It's very hard to describe that moment of change for me. So the reason that I decided not to write any remarks is because I'm usually very careful in my little worship associate bubble to write down everything and read it all. So I heard Scott's voice in my ear today saying, just wing it, you got this. He is missed to this day. What a wonderful occasion I had to be in his choir and make all the wonderful friends that he shared the same qualities with that he shared with me. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Bob Foss, if anyone doesn't know that. I just wanted to say a few words about Scott as I knew him. He was an extremely close friend. I always consider him a close friend, and he was a friend of everybody who knew him. He was the glue that held this church together for many years. He was the one, no matter what happened, we had some problems occasionally with ministers and so on, but Scott was the glue. He just was the one that kept everybody together. When I joined the choir, and at one time long ago, Helen and I both joined the choir. Helen had been in it longer than me. Scott's attitude was, I guess you would say, get the right word, no fault harmony. That was a favorite key. And he was able, you could sing or you didn't have to be able to sing. Scott made you sing or was able to create sound in you that you didn't know you had. And I know that people that knew Scott and did things with him, they all loved him. I remember taking him and Martin. We went flying a few times. He loved that. And that was a thing that just seemed to, he went to see, what was the one comment he made? I'm going to go see God when we went flying. Oh, well. So anyway, I just wanted to say a little something about him. He was so important to me and I think to everyone who knew him.
That was great, Bob. I'm a choir follower. Since I don't sing, but I appreciated it very much. I first met Scott and heard him at Star Island, as did Sally Hamburger. And when an opening arose here, she immediately suggested that Scott become our music director. So that was great. And then more years ago than I care to remember. Gail Shepard suggested that Scott have the title of Minister of Music, which seemed very appropriate and through the years was tremendous. And as time went by, I liked to go out to lunch after the service with Scott and anyone else who was up for it. And I would take him on hospital visits where he would very skillfully manage to comfort people who were ill from the church. So he was a minister of music in lots and lots of ways, and he will always be part of my heart.
Hi, I'm Betty Weir, and all the things that have been said about Scott, I agree that I remember going through a lot of different ministers and so on, but Scott was still there, and he got us all together. But the thing that I remember especially was I had to bring my dog because we were coming from to choir rehearsal because we were coming from a veterinarian appointment, and I'd ask him if that was okay, and he said, "Oh, sure." And so I brought Zoe, and Zoe walked right up and said hello to Scott. And he said, "Oh, you need to bring him more often." So I would bring him, or her. Oh my goodness, it was a her. I have a him now, and so whenever I would bring Zoe, and Zoe would walk up and say hello, and then comfort herself on the floor, being very happy. And I was glad to be able to do that too.
Hello, I'm Susie Cornell, also known as the Susanator, the nickname given to me by Scott and Jan and the choir. And Oscar is here because he was brought to my hospital room by Joan and John Priest and Scott, of course. He was sitting on Scott's arm like this. And when I got home from the hospital a couple days later, Oscar received a little love from me. And he's been in my home ever since. And a nice memory. I'm glad I didn't cry.
Scott had a real inspiration for what he did. He told me a story of one time when he and his sister Lisa were teenagers. As they wandered around Princeton, they found a graveyard that was in very poor shape. So they brought their lawnmower and they mowed the grass, made it look better. They did that a couple of times when the black community realized it was their cemetery, at which point they picked it up themselves.
I'm Helen Foss, and I was a member of the choir from about 1972 until last year when I finally faced the fact my voice is gone. So I happened to be on the search committee when we were looking for the music director in the mid-90s. And interestingly, we actually, the committee before us, had actually picked somebody, and that person decided not to take it. So we started again. And thank you, Sally Hamburger. She had suggested to Scott that he apply. And of course, it was a no-brainer once we met Scott. And then when he started choir, it was just such a joy. It was fun. He made us make wonderful music, and we had such joy doing it. I have to say thank you for that first scene up there of Scott particularly. The love I felt when I saw that image on the screen just brought back all those years of specialness. He was such a gift to us.
Hi, my name's George Hune, and Scott was the first person that I met when I came to this church when Bob Doss was a minister, and I just came for a day, and Bob Doss gave a great sermon, and there was a little lunch afterwards, and I was sitting outside with my partner, and Scott came over and introduced himself, and couldn't have been more friendly. And then when I came back to the church years later, Scott was still here, and it was wonderful to see that, and I always enjoyed his music. When I heard that he died, the first words that came to my mind were the words from James Taylor. I always thought I'd see you again. And I know now, I'll never see Scott again, but he'll always be in my heart, and I'll always remember him. And in particular, he'd asked me to join the choir, and I came to some big music Sundays. I joined for some big music Sundays, and we sang Bach and Mozart and all. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing to me. And I was talking with Rebecca one time, and I said, this music is just so beautiful. And she said, it's unbearably beautiful. And that's what it was. And that phrase has stuck with me for all this time because, like I told Scott, I said, Scott, if I live long enough to be in a rocking chair on a porch, I'm going to remember these. I'm going to remember these moments of singing with this choir and singing this unbearably beautiful music. And as I play music now, I think about how unbearably beautiful it is. And finally, one thing I want to mention about Scott, which was amazing, he had a lot of courage. And after our son died, he helped put together the service and so forth, just being there, supportive as he would. And he said George, if you need somebody to read your eulogy, I'll do it for you. I said, no, Scott, I'll be able to do it. Well, of course I couldn't do it. So Scott read the eulogy that Julie and I wrote for Leon. And that was an incredible, incredible gift to have Scott's wonderful voice reading our words. But that's the kind of person Scott was. He could anticipate what a person needed and be there for them, be there for all of us. And I miss Scott.
What was not mentioned by was where they were living when all this happened was at the craft shop in Arden, which I owned at the time and had as an apartment house, sort of. And my first recollections of Scott was not good. And in fact, he had a small fire in his room, which was at this place in Arden, which is a sort of a historic building. We wouldn't want to lose it. I was just frantic of what to do, so I had a long talk with Scott, and thereafter, and then I got to know Scott, and I found out much learning for me is what he was like really and what kind of a person he was. And after a couple years, I really got to enjoy him and his ideas and what he had in his head, because it was really extraordinary. So I here today because I really admire Scott. So that was that. Something else, but I can't remember. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it was to thank you for having this today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Scott helped me do this a few times, climb up. Before I read the lovely story that Scott wrote, I want to share my personal memory of him. And we all know of Scott's music ministry. And like George, I was fortunate enough to receive another aspect of his ministry. As you will hear in this story, Scott knew joy, but he also knew and understood sadness and sorrow. For nearly a year after my daughter died, Scott would call me every few weeks, just to check in, he would say. Scott wasn't afraid of grief. In fact, he didn't even try to tell me that everything would be fine and that I would get over her death. Instead, he invited me to tell him stories and memories of Laura. It was such a profound ministry of love. And then he shared some memories of his loved ones. He gave me a profound blessing of shared memories, just as he does in this story. A Starry Night. The party was over. All the guests were off to their own houses of Christmas trees and tacky decorations, silly manger scenes, heirlooms placed on the mantle with care. And there I was in a house of after party. Half-filled glasses of punch, snack trays with half-eaten treats that the rest of the year we would never dare serve or, for that matter, eat. Awaiting the magical elf, me, to clean. Pillows so neatly arranged on the couch, now strewn everywhere in the room. Candles burned down to stubs, threatening to spill on the table for a session of scraping tomorrow morning. And for what? Another season of the gathering of irrelevant stories, half-truth holiday wishes, promise of let's get together real soon, when the reality of loneliness simply waits until all leave before coming back in the room. I knew it best to clean then, not wait for tomorrow. It would only be more depressing then. But first, I would sit down, just for a moment. I woke up with his nose pushing on my arm, looking for attention. I casually scratched the top of his head, playing with an ear in the process. He jumped onto my lap. "Down, boy," I absently offered, but Kirby knew I had no conviction in my voice and decided that my face needed licking. It probably did. We spent a few minutes there, my hands and nails scratching those places that years have taught me are his favorites, while my face was being covered with slobber and love. "I guess we both could use some fresh air, huh, Kirby?" He bounded out into the cold air as soon as I opened the door. I slowly followed. He started to run to the field behind the house. I called him back. "Come on, boy, you know you're not allowed back there." Normally an obedient dog, Kirby ignored my instructions and ran off into the field. He came back and barked at me, and then ran back in the field again. This repeated several times until I followed. All right, what's back there?" I walked into the field and found him in the middle of a clearing, a warm, soft shaft of moonlight beaming on him. He was just sitting there. I went over and sat too. There we were, the two of us, sitting on Christmas early morning, midnight gone more than an hour. All is calm, all is bright. I idly scratched his ear. He gave a quick bark and looked to the sky. "What is it, Kirby? What do you see?" He barked again and once more looked at the sky. I looked up. I squinted to see what he saw, my companion of years, my best of friends. Then slowly I realized what he saw. Stars, stars, moon and sky, vastness and infinity, joy and hope and earth and possibility. In this crystal sky, the first sky of Christmas, a sky for you and me, a sky, a world, a hope. I suddenly woke, lying in the snow in the clearing. I reached out to pat my friend, but the cold breeze reminded me he was not there. Kirby had gone for many years, torn from me by illness. All that remains are the memories, or is there more? I look up. The sky is the same. The world hangs in awesome slumber, and the house doesn't seem so messy. The party doesn't seem so irrelevant. The stars don't fade into the background as I had let them in the past. I am here, brought back by the memory of love. brought back to rediscover what we all need to be reminded of. That night, that silent, silent, holy night, that Christmas night when all was calm, all was bright. Love was born in the name of a baby. I walked back to the house, determined to remember every night is a holy night.
Here's a song from a musical I can say probably only 6 or 7 people in this audience have seen. It's called Making of David. It's fine. To have lived and no one ever say that the world we have today is a better place, because I was there once. To have lived and no one think I'm brave, and no one feel I gave a moment of my time with a smile to have lived, and no one think I'm strong. No one see me stand for the right or take the blame for the wrong. For the tragedy of a life is not in its death, but in what dies within us as we live. I want to give of myself, so it can be said to have loved, to have cried, to have cared, to have tried, to have died, and someone say my name, and say I'm glad he came. He made the world a better place. For the tragedy of a life is not in its death, but in what dies within us as we live. I want to give of myself, so it can be said to have loved, to have tried, to have cared, to have cried, to have died, and someone say my name, and say I'm glad he came. He made the world a better place for a
I think I can safely say that we're all glad you came, Scott. Before we close, I'd like to invite you to join us in the parish hall for some light refreshments. This is called New Beginnings by Scott Ward. And I saw a new sky, crisp and clear. The ground, moist and soft, the air filled with wonder. This was not the first sky I had seen, for the day I saw my first sky and felt my first ground had gone. But in this revelation, they seemed new. I saw in my heart a new community of earth, where all could find some measure of love and all could be in peace. I felt in my heart that there could be a new tabernacle, a tabernacle of existence where all had a place and all would be with each other. This togetherness I could call God. There would be tears, there would be death, there would even be pain for things that happened in the former would still be with us. But if this day of new, crisp, clear sky came, and if this tabernacle of love became real, all tears could be wiped away, all pain and sorrow could be passed by. This I could call a miracle. Thank you, Scott.